It is fascinating because I would think, without looking, other than that kind of the Russia war story. I mean, with them being one of the largest nickel mines right now, having one of the largest nickel mines, that it surprises me that because people are so familiar with lithium, and maybe it's a more of a mainstream news that people kind of go, oh yeah, I understand lithium, but the nickel has been more well funded. It is interesting. It's fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more advanced nickel projects out there. We've been exploring for nickel for a while. So on the next slide, I kind of zoom in on just the lithium, and you could see kind of the breakdown between grassroots versus other types of projects. So grassroots is still getting started here.
Yep.
2022 was a big year for grassroots exploration. Now I mentioned this before, that there's arguably an oversupply of lithium companies, and with that, whenever anything gets hot, right, it attracts a certain type of promoter, right? Whether they're chasing crypto or cannabis, or nowadays it seems some of them are pivoting from lithium to probably artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
They're looking for, okay, how can they raise money? Lithium's a way to do it because it's hot. So whenever anything gets heated, you get a lot of people that really aren't in it for the long run. They're in it for the short run, right?
Yes.
And a lot of over promotion, in my view. So I think it's very important that investors learn a little bit about the geology here, and some of the common things that the promoters might promote,
Yeah.
and what that actually means, right?
I think that's super important. Also, I mean, you don't have to lock in time frames, like we were saying, like a grassroots project time frame to a mine.
It's even longer. Yeah.
Like it's they say 17 years. Say everything goes well. And I don't think people really grasp if they go, "Are you willing to hold this for 17 years?" Or what's your point in this curve, or how are you going to play this? And if someone says, "Oh, it's a fast moving play," it's like, well, that could still be 3 to 5 years.
Mining is not for short-term investors, in my view, right? Like
Yes.
if you're in the mining industry, the life cycle is long, right? To go from discovery to production, that takes years. It's not something that I would recommend people try to time.
That's why, I mean, for me, we look at projects and we like the thesis and the merits, and we're going to hold for 3 to 5 years. And that's hard. That's even hard for someone like me, because I like stuff and it's like, ooh, this is interesting. This is interesting. But at least I have time where I can just go research something, and that fulfills my my curiosity. Whether or not I invest in it, I don't know. But the macro, as you've had tons of videos and tons of reports out there talking about the macro for lithium, we touched on it a little bit. It's there. It's here to stay. And I think having a strong Canadian component is critical.
For sure. I mean, Canada is a mining friendly country, right? And there's been a lot of government incentives to develop grassroots projects and more advanced projects, but flow through being the obvious one. And then critical minerals flow through. Going back to the geology now, and again, I'm going back to the fact that grassroots exploration is basically brand new for lithium, right? We're all still figuring out what works, what doesn't work. Geophysics, geochem, what kind of geochem, how do we find new lithium deposits? And that's something everyone's trying to figure out. But a lot of companies are in my view, over promoting what they have, right?
Yeah.
So this chart here is the typical exploration model for LCT pegmatites. LCT being lithium, cesium, and tantalum. So the type of pegmatites that you're after. But essentially, in this pink blob down here, you've got your granitic source. All pegmatites come from a granitic source, and when this granite comes into contact during a continental collision with the source, that's this big white area around it, the granite melts into the host rock, and the pegmatites are offshoots of this granitic source. What's key is that lithium mineralization is spatially related to this granite source. There's some type of regional zonation. If you know where your source is and you're in a pegmatite field, you know, and you're seeing certain minerals here and there, you can somewhat infer, okay, where are you on the system? If you follow this direction here, you might be able to vector in on where you're more likely to see lithium. But obviously this is a model. Life is never that simple, right? Generally, there's a Goldilocks zone 3 to 4 kilometers away, but it could really vary. Pegmatites are complex, right?
Yeah.
And but the point of this is that a lot of the pegmatites most of them actually are barren. Like they don't have any lithium in it.
Okay.
They don't have spodumene in it. So if you have a historically mapped pegmatite on your ground, that doesn't necessarily mean much, right? Because chances are there's a good chance that it's barren. Now to this Corvette case study. So Corvette is being advanced by Patriot Battery Metals. Fantastic deposit, truly. I've got a piece of spodumene sitting right there behind me from Corvette. It's incredible what they found, no doubt about it. And whenever a company's putting out fantastic drill results, there's a rush around it, right? And I mentioned before, this was found, this is already historically documented. It wasn't technically, it wasn't really a new discovery, but PMET was the first to drill it off. Going to the next slide here, you see this map here. Now, the CV pegmatite trend occurs in this east-west type of shear zone, and it's hosted entirely in this volcanic belt. And then we see all these companies to the north and to the south of it that market closeology, and this is the point that I'm getting at. Look where they are. There's a lot of granodiorite rock around it, and it's possible to find lithium in that, but it's much less prospective. I'd be surprised if anyone found something comparable to Corvette just by being immediately south of them. Yes. Or to the north, right? The point is that closeology is a poor indicator of prospectivity. And if you're marketing closeology, first and foremost, that's kind of a red flag to me. You should be marketing the local geology on your claims above anything else.
Yes. Yeah. The merit of the project stand alone, and then can it add tonnage to a neighbor? Okay, great. I mean, that's a great angle as well. But yeah, the closeology by itself, that is a great warning flag.
Yeah. So I have this list here, and this was from, I'll give credit to Red Cloud here because I prepared this list for one of my keynote presentations while I was at Red Cloud. But one of the things to look out for as well was companies bragging about having, 99th percentile lithium in lake sediments anomalies. Okay. I could go out there and stake you 99th percentile anomalies. There's still plenty unstaked. It doesn't mean much.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
So that alone doesn't mean much. I'm not saying the data is worthless. It's useful. It's very useful.
Yeah.
We use it too. But you can't solely rely on it is all. It's marketable. So essentially years back, the government flew either a float plane or a helicopter to different lakes throughout the provinces here. So in Ontario, but also in Quebec and Manitoba, they flew and they landed on these lakes, and they shot essentially like a torpedo to the bottom of the lake and pulled up sediments that were captured by this torpedo, and they assayed it for everything. So something to note with lithium is that it's very mobile. You don't actually know where the lithium necessarily came from. You don't know if it came from a clay, for example.
Okay.
You don't know if it came from spodumene. Spodumene is a mineral that you're generally after. You don't know if it came from lepidolite. Lepidolite is another source of lithium, but it's not as sexy as spodumene. Lepidolite's generally lower grade, more difficult to process, etc. But that's what I'm getting at, is you don't know where it came from, and you also don't know how far it traveled. Who's to say that, say it came from spodumene, who's to say that it actually came from your claims? It might have came from kilometers away.
Yeah.
Something we look out for is we look for clusters of high anomalism in areas where there's low anomalism. We also look for how it maps on with nearby. We're not relying on closeology, but something to note is if you're in an area where there's very thin overburden,
Okay. Yes.
We suspect that the bedrock geology is likely more representative of what you're seeing in the lakeside data.
Yep.
And also, you want to make sure that it maps on well with the indicators: cesium, tantalum, and gallium. And then there's of course more, but essentially because lithium likes to move a lot, it's more encouraging when it maps right on with the indicators, because it suggests that it's more real. You're less likely to have been duped. It's still not something you should purely rely on.
Okay. That's interesting. Yeah. So like it can send off a signal to some degree, but not, it may not have, like I said, has moved. The large amount of it could be gone by the time you see it, some sort of.
I think you got to use it in conjunction with other data.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And again, I could stake you a highly marketable project that, in my view, is it ranks very low in terms of prospectivity. Right. So yes. I'm just warning investors, don't get duped.
No, but this is it's so important, because a lot of people will say, this sounds great, this project, oh wow, it's very tough for someone who even knows a bit about mining to then say they've invested in copper in the past. Well, lithium's different. This is a different structure. It's a different animal. Never mind, well, is it a brine or hard rock? So for you to be able to sit here and give us some good kind of metrics, that's we really appreciate it.
I think education is how you develop trust with future investors, right?
Yes.
And it's nice that I could do this, and because I don't have to be overly promotional as a private co, right?
Yes. So absolutely.
Assays above 8.03% lithium, and the reason that's in there, that's a red flag is because the theoretical maximum lithia content, that is Li2O, of pure spodumene crystal is 8.03%. You can't exceed that. And I saw a company, I believe it was one of the Aussie companies, they put out assay results that were above that, from grab samples. And that to me suggests either they're wrong, or they're lying, or it's amblygonite or another lithium bearing mineral that is less recoverable or harder to recover than spodumene, right?
Yeah.
So that's another thing to look out for. It doesn't happen often. But also, the last one here is management teams that lack lithium expertise and are just flocking to whatever's hot. A lot of, I call them the shell guys, right? They start off with the shell, and they're like, okay, we need to put something in here. Lithium's hot. And they don't actually have a team that has any real lithium expertise or real exploration expertise, honestly.
Yeah.
And another thing that's not on here is a lot of companies are trying to emulate the success of other companies, trying to assemble the biggest land package that they can.
Yes.
Right. And they treat exploration as a numbers game. And I'm not saying that's the wrong approach. There's no right or wrong approach to anything. Right. But I'm just saying that, if you're going to have a huge land package and you're going to have plenty of pegmatites that you need to kill off.
Yeah.
A, it's expensive, but B, you got to have a team to do that.
Yes. Yeah. Like if an Elon Musk said, hey, listen, I've got 200,000 acres that I'm like, okay, are you going to fund it? Like, yeah, I'm going to fund it. Like, cool.
Yeah.
I've got 89 targets I want to hit. Awesome.
Exactly.
But it is tough when you see companies that you say, okay, that's great, but that's like who's going to fund all of this? Like that, just even to like walk that terrain is going to take forever.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm of the view that pegmatites aren't as quick to kill off as some people have been making them out to be. Some people think like it's a function of, oh, let's just stand on the pegmatite, shoot our XRF or LIBS gun on it, and then move on. I don't think it's ever that simple. You still need to have systematic exploration in order to kill off a project.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
So to me, I don't think I'm not saying that there's no merit to it being a numbers game. I just think it's not a pure numbers game. You still need to have qualified people that are running the show on the exploration front.
Now with the pegmatite, are those more shallow in general, or can they go very deep? They can go very deep. Okay.
Yeah. They originate from deep rooted structures, right? Okay. They had to get there somehow.
Of course, yes.
Yeah, often you'll find them, often in Ontario and Quebec and Manitoba, the Superior Province, as they call it, they tend to occur near these sub-province boundaries.
Okay.
So that's like a different, call it a geological country. Okay.
Yeah.
A geologist would probably want to punch me in the face for saying that. But call it a geological country that splits up the Superior Province. Pegmatites tend to occur, X kilometers from a sub-province boundary.
Right.
There are notable exceptions, like where we are at our Flanders project. Like the Quetico is a known exception. The Quetico sub-province, that's one of those geological countries where pegmatites actually tend to occur closer, smack in the middle of this metasedimentary belt.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's, with Flanders, that was kind of our approach. It's like, okay, well, we like the Quetico. There's these deep-rooted structures. Lithium-bearing pegmatites are more likely to occur central within the belt. So that was kind of part of the thesis behind that one. But it's something else to add to this. You made the money symbol.
Yeah.
When markets are hot and people are desperate to get a lithium project, especially if they don't have the expertise in-house to generate their own projects, they enter into option agreements. And I see it especially in Quebec. Some of these option agreements are crazy expensive.
Yes.
But I feel like too many investors are ignoring that aspect.
Yes.
So I'd recommend to investors to map out, when will this company need to raise additional capital just to maintain their claims. Again, speaking of what I said before, I don't think if projects are as easy to kill off as certain management teams make it sound.
Yes.
So it's important to map this out. Okay, when are these option payments due?
Yeah, like have they set themselves up enough running room, with the amount of funding they have in dollars, but also in these payments that are going out. It's like they might only literally have a year and a half or so of actual work time before, if you didn't hit anything, it's now probably a lower price and a bigger amount of money you need.
Just something to look out for. I'm not saying option agreements are bad. I mean, you can get some great projects under option. I'm just saying that to watch out for companies that are overpaying for it is all.